We've talked a lot about the future of the Republican Party and electoral politics after Trump lost his re-election bid, but we've also talked a bit about what this means for Trump personally. As I said months ago, people are going to be going after former President Trump like you've never seen before, and now a Supreme Court ruling has opened the door to more of that. Today, the Supreme Court, in a couple of rulings, dealt some blows to President Trump, but the most significant came today on his tax returns. I'm going to jump right into CNN article. And actually, before I do that, I do want to thank you all for tuning in as you do every day. And I really want to thank you all for sharing your thoughts on all the goings on, all the stuff we're covering. And I really do appreciate it. So I do want to encourage you at the outset to let your voice be heard, to comment down below on all these topics. We really want to stir this conversation up, as I say, in our small corner of the internet, building our little space. So I want to thank you all ahead of that. Let's jump into the CNN story for today. The Supreme Court cleared the way for New York prosecutor to obtain former President Donald Trump's tax returns, dealing a massive loss to Trump, who has fiercely fought to shield his financial papers from prosecutors. The documents will be subject to grand jury secrecy rules that restrict their public release. And my editorial comment is, yeah, right. I'm sure we'll see these released to the public. They will appear somewhere. And no, Facebook and Twitter will not censor their release. Quick prediction on that. The ruling is a bitter loss for Trump, even if the tax records are shielded from public disclosure, after he consistently argued that the subpoena issued by Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance was overbroad and bad faith. Vance celebrated the order, saying in a tweet, "The work continues." Trump's team didn't respond. It says, although Trump's personal lawyers may continue their fight, their appeal in their case, the fact that the documents will be released by Trump's long-term accounting firm Mazars effectively ends this dispute. And there's a ruling here from last July. This has been a long-running fight for Trump to keep these records sealed, but that is over. They will now be in the hands of the DA. Trump's personal lawyers then took the case back to the Supreme Court, urging the justices to put the lower court ruling on hold while they considered whether to take up an appeal. And this was their argument. The subpoena is geographically sprawling, temporally expansive, and topically unlimited. All attributes that raise suspicions of an unlawful fishing expedition. Even if disclosure is confined to the grand jury and prosecutors, once the documents are surrendered, will be lost for all time. And continuing on, look, this is going to Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance. He's basically investigating Trump for basically bad dealings, really centering on the payments. I think one of them, the Stormy Daniels thing, is going on here. If there was some sort of tax avoidance, some sort of financial crimes with the Trump organization, and the question is, we've never seen a former president be prosecuted. We've never seen a former president be convicted, but that might all change, won't it? Don't you agree? I mean, do you think it seems like they're just going to completely go after him? This is only the first of many this going on in Manhattan DA going after the Trump organization. Now they're going to have access to all his financial records. And Trump's argument was, well, maybe if you ask for something specific, if you have something specific in mind, maybe it is Stormy Daniels. Okay, well, maybe we'll show you that. But no, they wanted all the documents, and that's why they called it a fishing expedition. This is just the beginning for President Trump, and we've talked in weeks past about what Trump's role in the Republican Party will be, whether or not he will form his own party, the Patriot Party, which many of you were in support of. And as I said, it's not a bad idea, but former President Trump is going to be made public enemy number one, and he's going to be so tied up with legal and civil battles that it will probably be functionally impossible for him to do anything. And as I said, what is he going to, the minute President Trump announces he's going to run for office, all that will be under complete scrutiny, more so than anyone in the past. Any kind of transaction will be combed over by the IRS, and they will be looking for something. The message is clear to Donald Trump. Do not ever think of running again. And that was really what the failed second impeachment was about barring him from future public office. But don't worry, that was just a minor setback. We've got the Supreme Court clearing the way to release all of his financial records. And you know what? I don't want to claim bad faith by anybody, but if they're looking for something, they will find something, and I do expect that he will be charged and potentially convicted, unless maybe somebody from higher up steps in and say, well, let's just let him go quietly. And a question for you: does this set a dangerous precedent, or if there is wrongdoing, is no one above the law? Should President Trump be prosecuted? Do you believe that the Manhattan District Attorney will be operating fairly to President Trump? I want to know what you think about that. Now, it wasn't just the tax return. There was also another Supreme Court ruling related to the elections, Pennsylvania election. Another one here: Supreme Court won't hear 2020 election case that questions some Pennsylvania ballots. And for some reason, there's a picture of Prince Charles there. I don't know why. The Supreme Court declined Monday to hear a dispute over whether absentee ballots received up to 3 days after Election Day in Pennsylvania should be counted in the 2020 presidential election. In a decision that split the court and prompted dissents from 3 conservative justices, the High Court shut down a challenge from Pennsylvania Republicans who sought to block a state court ruling allowing the deadline extension. But even those dissenting judges acknowledged the legal questions of the case would not have affected the November election. Republicans argued the extension was improper because it was not approved by the state legislature. Right. I remember this in Pennsylvania, and this was not the only state, but in Pennsylvania, they allowed mail-in ballots coming in 3 days afterwards. Republicans in the state sued, says no. I believe this was issued by the Secretary of State and then upheld in the High Court of Pennsylvania. Republican legislatures were like, no, you can't do this because only a change in law has to come from the legislature. But the courts don't seem to have a problem with it for some reason. Here's a dissent from Clarence Thomas. The decision to rewrite rules seems to have affected too few ballots to change the outcome of any federal election, but that might not be the case in the future. Now, I mean, question really for all of you, and I want to know what you think about this ruling. One, how do they know that too few ballots would be affected? How do they have that information? How do they know how those ballots were split that were received up to 3 days after the election? How do they know that it wouldn't affect the outcome? And two, it's either legal or it's not, right? What difference does it make? I believe we've heard many times that all votes are sacred, right? And I think many of us believe that. So even accepting that it doesn't change the outcome, it's either right or wrong. And having extra ballots counted could have swayed some other race down ballot. So I don't find this to be, I don't know how they know that, and I don't find that to be a good enough reason. I think they should rule on the merits of whether or not it was legal for the state to do this without the legislature's approval. But they're rendering it moot and basically forget it and move on. So if you're looking for some sort of reform, I guess, in how states are counting their ballots, well, don't count on it. Back to our conversation again about Trump losing the re-election and what that might mean for national electoral politics, going forward. Well, we got a partial answer from the Supreme Court. The states can change their laws and do what they want, and there doesn't seem to be any consequence because these justices don't believe it would have changed the outcome. I don't know how they know that, and they're not actually ruling on whether or not it was right for the state to extend its deadline arbitrarily. Big issue there. I want to know what you think about that. But it seems to be, I think the main takeaway here is they're just sweeping it under the rug. Forget about it. Move on from the 2020 election. That is the message. That's my takeaway. What do you think? Now, I want to hit on something that we talk about some of the harder hitting things. But now I want you to be aware. It's something critical for you all to be aware of, particularly if you are if you subscribe to the streaming service Disney Plus. I want you to know something that you may not have known. The Muppets Show is very offensive. Now we've got a disclaimer warning slapped on from Disney Plus about, yes, the Muppets Show. Oh no.
You think there's life in outer space? There's certainly none in this theater. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, I'm just going to stop that right there because I'm already offended. This is one of the most disgusting TV shows I've ever seen in my life. And I can't believe that this kind of filth was able to be aired back in the 70s and 80s. And I know I feel like I'm deeply affected, deeply hurt for having been exposed to this stuff as a child. You know, these things were rerunning well into the 80s and the 90s. And I cannot believe that this kind of offensive dreck has been allowed to be beamed into millions of Americans' home. I mean, the unknown casualties from this horrible, horrible, offensive show. I don't know that the culture can ever recover from this. Let's get to the story here from the New York Post. Even the Muppets are offensive these days. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. Anyone who streams the Muppet Show on Disney Plus will see a disclaimer first, warning of offensive content. Disney released 5 seasons of the iconic show. No, I'm not even going to call it iconic. I'm going to call it dangerous and offensive and all that is evil in the world. On Friday, released the show on Friday, allowing viewers to watch Kermit the Frog. That awful Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy. I mean, giving pigs a bad name. Fozzie Bear. I mean, he might be nice and cuddly, but as people, particularly who live in the north and in some places here in Florida, bears can be very, very dangerous. So it might be giving children a wrong impression of how bears actually are. They are not warm and cuddly and funny and silly like Fozzie Bear. They could actually be dangerous creatures. So very misleading there to the youth of the United States. As part of and celebrity guests, yes, the disclaimer was shown prior to each episode. It warns viewers that the show features stereotypes and mistreatment of peoples or cultures. Now, most of these things are creatures and animals. It's not quite clear here what's going on. This is the disclaimer that you will now read if you are interested in watching this offensive show. The program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. But rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversations to create a more inclusive future together. Now, it's so bad, but they have to put a disclaimer on it. Now, what really the issue is, well, we paid a lot of money for the rights of the Muppet Show, and we want to air it, and we know people really like it, but we got to slap on this stinking thing warning people of how bad it is to have Muppets in a comedy show talking to one another and singing and dancing and engaging in hijinks. Unbelievable. It says Disney is committed to creating stories with inspirational and aspirational themes that reflect the rich diversity of human experience around the globe. Bear in mind, these are Muppets: a frog, a pig, a bear, a gonzo, a dog, various other creatures. Now there are some cranky old men, so that could be offensive, particularly to cranky old men. It's unstated precisely what Disney considers to be offensive in the show, but some characters depict Native American, Middle Eastern, and Asian people. And they're leaving one out. Me, as you may have known, I am of Swedish descent, and when I was a kid, we jokingly would say that my dad resembled the Swedish Chef in a humorous way. Because with the mustache and everything. So I am deeply offended. I demand Disney Plus remove the Swedish Chef. That is an offensive and stereotypical depiction of Swedish people and Swedish, the way people make their food. Now, I don't know if he was making some pickled herring or not, but either way, I find it deeply, deeply disturbing. It did affect my life. And as someone of Swedish descent, I demand, actually, you know what, just the disclaimer is not good enough. I want this show taken down because now I am traumatized. I'm traumatized by seeing the Swedish Chef. We share an ancestry, and I'm not like that. I'm not like the Swedish Chef, and people could get a very, very wrong, inaccurate view of Swedish people and Swedish people who like to cook. He was not very good at his job. That implies that Swedes cannot be good at their job, that they cannot cook food, that they're mumbling and they're silly, and they talk funny. So I am deeply, deeply offended by that. I want to know what you think. Do you agree with me? If not, do you also demand that Disney Plus take down? Do you agree with me? I think this warning is not enough. Look, if it's so offensive to have some Muppets doing a comedy show, then what are you playing it for, right? This is absolutely nonsense. And here is maybe the money shot here. There is a season 5 legendary singer Johnny Cash is seen performing in front of a Confederate flag. The warning also appears before some iconic movies such as Aristocrats, Dumbo, Peter Pan, and Swiss Family Robinson. I'm not really sure what's going on with any of these. Is it offensive to elephants? Peter Pan, I don't know. It maybe both Peter Pan and Swiss Family Robinson showing stereotypical depictions of pirates, maybe. I don't really get this, but I want to know what you think. I mean, have we not, has the country not gone completely mad yet, or what? Or do we still have lower to go? I think we do have lower to go. I want to know what you think. Are the Muppets offensive? Do you agree with me on the Swedish Chef thing? Do you feel my pain? Are you offended along with me? I've been suffering all these years, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even realize. I thought that's how. I assumed that's how everyone saw me, as a Swedish person. So very, very offensive there. Terrible, terrible news. What do you think about Disney Plus now putting a disclaimer in front of the Muppets, of all things? Now, before we get out of here, I want to hit one quick thing. Following up, it basically is a follow-up story from 2 weeks ago, following the Super Bowl. And I did a video, and I'm sure many of you saw the stories, that much consternation, much fear that we are all going to die after the Super Bowl. There's a story here from Vice News, and I showed a bunch here that the NFL honored healthcare workers by throwing a super spreader party, and there was people here without masks, not showing the. Well, yeah, there was people were very confused. They thought the stadium was full, but it was majority was cardboard cutouts. And by the way, you might be able to hear in the background, that is my dog snoring dreaming very loudly. I think she's maybe trying to chase a rabbit in the woods in her dreams. So please bear with me on that. And really the big thing after this was the revelry going on, the victory party in the bars here. I am in the Tampa Bay area, and there was a spot called Ybor City, which is the kind of the center of nightlife in the Tampa area, just outside the city. Lots of partying, lots of revelry. There was one guy climbing a tree, very few people wearing masks, lots of people packed together. So there was some serious fear of these celebrations being a super spreader event. Well, you might be happy to know that I looked into the data and found this chart. There it is, Hillsborough County, of which Tampa is in. And here are daily new cases per million. Right there is February 7th. This is where all people were endangering everyone. No spike. Cases just dropping the way they were. It was not a super spreader event. And before you say, well, people come from all over, that is true, partially. But the celebrations that were going on that Sunday night were in local bars. These were all local people. All were Bucs fans. It's very unlikely that any of those people hanging out there were out of state. Must have been just very few of them. Maybe a surrounding county or two. But the bulk of it were local residents hanging out, celebrating, celebrating at the bars, having a good time, celebrating. These were Bucs fans celebrating a Bucs victory in their own home city. And no, it was not a super spreader event. More fear-mongering going on. Well, maybe it's a little too late, because when people see these news stories, they go, oh no, wow, it's a super spreader event, and they never follow up 2 weeks later. Well, that's why you come here. That's why you come to informedamerican.com, because we do break through that mainstream media box. And yes, I will follow up 2 weeks later to give you an update on a big story that was circulating nationally that turned out to be absolute bunk. Now you've got it. Now you've got the proof. And if you hear about this nonsense, any of your friends, anywhere on Facebook or wherever you are, show them this chart. No, cases are continuing to drop like a rock, despite hundreds and thousands of people out there, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands of people out there on the streets celebrating the Bucs victory here in the local area. No, it was not a super spreader event. So, as we wrap here, I want to know what you think about this decision, on the Supreme Court decision on Trump's taxes. Do you think he will be prosecuted? Do you think he will be convicted? And does this kind of legal entanglement pretty much, does that prevent him from running again? I wager that it does, but I want to know what you think about that. Number two, the Muppets. Very offensive content. Do you agree with Disney Plus's slapping on an offensive content warning before watching our Muppet comedy show? Or is this more evidence of this whole place circling down the drain? And number three, what do you think of the super spreader event hysteria surrounding the Super Bowl? And do you have that same skeptical eye that I do when I see stories on the mainstream media? I mean, immediately, when I see something in the mainstream media, I just assume it's false. most of the time, and I want to go back and check what the heck they're talking about. And the fear mongering around the Super Bowl was completely blown out of proportion and inaccurate. So I want to know what you think about all of that stuff. I want to thank you for watching again. If you're watching here on Facebook, please hit the like button, share this video with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, we would love it if you would subscribe to our channel to get notifications for new videos. Also hit the like button. And of course, if you're watching here on Informed American, as many of you do, please sign up for our free newsletter. And I want to know what you think about all this stuff. Please comment down below. We love getting your feedback. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.